Hey Matt, how's it going?
It's going great, Josh. How are you?
Wait, it's only going great?
Oh, you're right. It's fantastic. Thanks for asking.
Woohoo! All right. Well, hello everyone, and welcome to this Attraction Pros webinar. We're really excited to be here today to talk to, not only for Matt and I to talk about things that we like talking about, but really to talk about the state of the industry. And we are joined by 5 amazing panelists from various associations.
And I would say this is even an opportunity for us to not talk so that we can hear these wonderful people talk. So let's start off with some introductions, and we'll start off with Matt Johnson, just because he's next to me on the Zoom grid. So Matt, if you could just say a little bit about yourself and your association, that'd be awesome.
Sure. Thanks, Matt and Josh, for having me here. My name is Matt Johnson, and I am the current chair of the Florida Attractions Association. Unlike the other panel members, I don't actually work for the association. Actually, I do. I just work for free, I think, is the difference. But I'm a volunteer on the board. But in my day job, I'm the executive director of the IMAG History and Science Center in Fort Myers, Florida. So I run attraction on a daily basis. But I've been involved with the Florida Attraction Association on the board since 2007, served a few years as the chair of the association, and so I'm very familiar with that. And this past year in particular, have been very involved in working the association through this crazy time that we've all been doing in the past year.
Awesome. Thank you, Matt, and welcome. Bethany, you're on mute. Sorry.
Story of my life this past 12 months.
We got out of the way early.
Bethany, you've given an entire speech and you've been on mute. So hello, thank you, Matt and Josh and everybody for the opportunity today. My name is Bethany Evans and I serve as the Executive Vice President for the International Association of Trampoline Parks. We have been in existence since 2012 and have grown steadily until the pandemic. And now we're taking a brief break from growth to get our members back on track and help to bounce forward in 2021. We do represent both trampoline parks and suppliers that do service the industry as well. So we are in just about every state and then multiple countries. We have members in just about 32 countries around the world. So we're excited to be here and we are excited to be part of the family entertainment industry. So thank you guys.
Excellent. Thank you. Rick from World Water Park Association.
Again, thanks for having us. We're glad to be here. I'm Rick Root. I'm the president of the World Water Park Association. We've been around since 1981 and we represent water parks all around the world. We have members now in more than 45 countries. We've had the same challenging year that everyone else in the attractions industry has had in 2020, and we're looking forward to a much better 2021.
Absolutely. Thank you, Rick. Appreciate that. John.
Hey, everybody. Hey, Matt, Josh. Good to see you guys. My name is John Hallenbeck. I'm the Vice President and Executive Director for IAAPA North America. IAAPA, of course, is the global association for the attractions industry. We have roughly 6,000 members worldwide, 4 offices around the globe. I take care of the United States and Canada for IAAPA and serve all of our members in those regions. So happy to see everybody and looking forward to participating.
Excellent. Glad to have you here, John. Thank you. And then lastly, Ed Hodgdon.
Hi, everybody. My name is Ed Hodgdon. I'm the secretary of NEAAPA, which is the regional trade association covering the Northeastern United States. We have about 170 members with members in all 7 states, the 6 New England states and New York State, as well as supplier members. And just like everyone else on here, it has been a challenging year, covering 7 different states with 7 different sets of guidelines. And sometimes there are local ones that you have to worry about, and still fighting the good fight to get everything reopened as quickly as possible.
Yeah. Cool. Well, thank you all so much for being here. We're really looking forward to an exciting conversation just about what each of you and each of your associations are doing to continue to support the industry and particularly your members. So I think a good place to start this off would be kind of from a government relations standpoint and what you and the association are doing to be an advocate for the industry and its members when working with various governments, mostly in the US, but also all over the world as well in terms of restrictions and what your members are able to do in terms of operating. So is there anyone who would like to take that one first? I see John leaning forward there.
I'll jump in there.
Right.
Yeah, basically, obviously with the pandemic and all of the changes that have happened, couldn't have come at the worst time. I mean, in 2019, I think all of us on this panel would have said that you probably were in some of the best years you've ever had in the industry, and just kind of came to a screeching halt. So there was a lot of education that needed to be done, both to, state and government officials, as well as to each other, just understanding each other's businesses, trying to find out where those needs were going to lie. Not having that proverbial crystal ball was a tough thing because nobody knew if this was going to stop in a week, in a month, in a year, whenever. So it was just really tough to try to formulate a plan. And then here in the US, when, it was decided that kind of the way things are going to reopen would be put to the states and not from a federal standpoint, that just compounded things by 50, right? And then all of a sudden you start compounding the 50 by counties and local jurisdictions, and that, is taking things into the thousands. So we're having to come up with an answer to 1,000 stories, and it's not easy to do with a workforce that is suffering like every other business that's going on with the pandemic. So we really focused on a couple key issues. The reason I mentioned education is people didn't really understand what attractions were. Was it a concert? Is it a sporting event? It's a large group of people in a place, but are you able to distance or not? Indoors versus outdoors. All of these things were factors that we were seeing as big, big issues. So we had to do a lot of education to people that didn't understand our jobs and didn't understand our industry, and try to get them to let us reopen and try to give them that crash course. So I think the advocacy efforts was taking those few items that we at least could adhere to. We at IAAPA created a reopening guidance, which is just kind of like a roadmap of a plan for people that they could use. When you said, I wanted to reopen my FEC, or I wanted to reopen my theme park, or I wanted to reopen my business if I was a manufacturer supplier. And this is what I will do to reopen safely, to give some confidence and some education, to those folks you are trying to talk to, and have them give you the ability to reopen. And a lot of people use that to create their own plans, and they were just always ever changing. So, sifting through all of that, doing what we could to get people together, trying to sing the same song out of the songbook, and, just really educate government officials on ways that we could try to get reopened. Then you have the flip side of that, which was when you can't reopen, we need help. We had people that didn't have jobs. We had people, the economy was suffering. We are not having revenues in any of our businesses. So now we shifted a little more to the help us and help this industry. So we had to now communicate again through either grassroots advocacy or direct lobbying to try to get the industry heard and get some of that money that the airlines or the restaurants or the hotels were seeing for the attractions industry. And so that was the next piece of that. And all the while, we're still trying to help the people that hadn't reopened yet or weren't able to get to any capacities open. So it's just been a large battle. And those were the two big things that we saw, from an IAAPA perspective, is the education in the beginning, and then asking for help once we found out if we were able to kind of get back on track or not.
Yeah, I'll jump in and kind of continue on the attraction side. I agree with most of what John was saying. That from a Florida perspective, we were very used to advocacy in Tallahassee at our state capitol, and the Florida Attractions Association has been doing that for its whole existence since 1949. But beyond that, we found we had to get very local in our advocacy and work with our attraction members who many of which had very little connection even with their local governments, as we started to see some vague and unspecific guidelines come down from Tallahassee. The governor's executive orders would use terms like amusement parks and attractions and museums, but then restaurants and gathering places. And, many of our attraction members were represented multiple different organizations. They had a restaurant, and they had a retail establishment, and they had a theater, and they had indoor, and they had outdoor. So can I open? Can I not open? But then a lot of that was pushed down to the local level. So we spent a lot of time one-on-one with one specific attraction and a specific local government, having to work with them to figure out how to get our attractions open as quickly as possible. Like John, we were very quick to issue some guidance on how to reopen. Because again, there was never a book, nobody ever sent us a PDF, said, do these things and you can reopen. They kind of left it to the industry to figure it out for ourselves. And obviously our individual attraction members didn't have the pool of resources to do that. So, we published very early on a guide to reopening, based on the guidelines that were out there, and being able to pull those together. In Tallahassee, we spent a lot of time at the governor's office with the legal counsel and getting definitions for our attraction members on what the executive orders meant and who was connected to this and who was connected to that. Just to keep our members out of trouble. Here in Florida, there were some counties where it didn't matter what you did, nothing was going to happen. Other counties, you did it wrong and a sheriff's deputy was going to show up at your door and shut you down. And so, working with the governor's office to get some clarity on what those executive orders meant. And, most recently, what we've done as far as advocacy is we lost a big opportunity this year with Visit Florida and our tourism days in Tallahassee. Typically, the entire industry here in Florida goes up to Tallahassee at the beginning of session to talk about things, beyond the pandemic. And what's coming up in the legislative session, from the budget for our state marketing to regulations on our industry. Obviously, that was shut down. They're not letting anybody go up and wander the halls of Tallahassee and knock on legislators' doors. So we started a program that just ran a couple weeks ago called District Days, where rather than everyone going up to Tallahassee, we worked with our attractions to invite out their legislators prior to going up for session to their attractions. And in the grand scheme of things, that's a much better place to have a conversation rather than sitting in an office in Tallahassee, sitting at your theme park or your zoo or your attraction, and having that conversation with your local legislators. So we were real pleased with that. I think, like everything with the pandemic, we learned a lot, and some things we did because we had to. But many of those we're going to continue to do, like virtual meetings and things like that. But, meeting with our legislators, at our attractions, that's going to be something that's going to continue moving forward. So yeah, it's been a learning process, and, FAA got involved at the federal level with the CARES Act and some of the PPP and the EIDL funding that came down to help our attraction members that, were out of business and had no revenue coming in, survive that. So it was a broad spectrum of advocacy that was required from the association. And, like IAAPA and the other associations that represent, I hope and I think as a member, not just representing the association, but as a member organization, I think a lot of member organizations have recognized, how important participation and involvement in their industry association has been this past year.
If I could dovetail off that a little bit, we set up when things really started to turn south about a year ago, and you knew that 2020 wasn't going to be the 2020 we all expected it to be. We stepped up in a way at NEAAPA of trying to get that dialogue going between members that normally we would have seen maybe at one of our events, and setting up virtual meetings over Zoom. Like Zoom became like everyone else, we really started to use Zoom to connect people and try and get as much information out there as we could. And we were doing our Monday member meetings, we called them. And at times we had 60 or 70 people on there, especially at the beginning, just trying to get a handle on what this was. Again, we're all sort of trying to Monday morning quarterback it, but every time we think we think we might be going in the right direction, it changes. And then, trying to deal with that on, multiple state levels, and sometimes you're dealing with different counties, and just education was a huge part of, as John and Matt had said, of trying to explain what your industry is. Everyone knows how a restaurant operates, a hotel. We're sort of a niche industry where, people will see, oh, well, I go there once a year. I only see sort of what we want them to see, which is good. But teaching them, what it actually takes to operate and really getting them. But we're also one of hundreds of other industries that seem to be fighting or having that same conversation. So just trying to stay at the top of people's understanding when they're looking at these guidelines and how they will affect us, and being willing to, listen. I think that was a huge thing, and helping the members understand that they need to be part of the solution as well. I think sometimes they'll just like, oh, well, you'll handle that, here you go. But getting them involved in the conversation was a huge part of that.
That's interesting. Thank you. Rick, what about you with WWA?
Well, I echo everything that's been said so far. One of the things that was, I think, a challenge this year, especially if you have a diverse membership, is the idea that many times in the past, advocacy worked for everyone. And we found, it really mattered if you were in Texas or you were in New York, if you were in Florida, if you were in California, the same tactics didn't work in both places. So we had to spend a lot of time working individually with parks. Another challenge that I think was maybe unique to our members, from the very beginning, we launched back in early February of 2020, a COVID resource page. And one of the first things I think we all started doing was recommend that people follow recommendations from the CDC and the World Health Organization. I think that was just the standard practice. About the end of March last year, the CDC came out with guidance that said people should not go to pools and water parks. So we'd spent all that time creating the mindset that we had to follow the CDC guidelines, and then they came out and said people shouldn't go to our parks. So we worked a lot with our partners at the CDC. It was about a 6-week process to address that, and eventually we were able to get them to make that change. And we found it in that advocacy effort. They had a lot of things going on last March and April, and worrying about swimming pools was pretty far down on their list. So it was a challenge. When we finally got those guidelines amended, we did a webinar in partnership with the CDC, and we had more than 1,200 people sign up for it. It was there was a huge demand for that information, and really what the CDC was going to come out with to allow parks to get open, because we were finding in many of the states were hesitant to take a step forward because they didn't want to conflict with the CDC guidelines. So that was probably one of the significant things that we did that was maybe not part of the rest of the organization's efforts because of the types of attractions. But we're pleased to see where things are going this year, and many of our members in states that did not open last year are hopefully on a path to see an opening this year. Even if it's at greatly reduced capacity, it's still a chance for them to open.
Mm-hmm. Bethany, how about you?
Yeah, sure. Very similar to what everyone else has said, so I'm not going to repeat, but just a couple key points. It was about educating legislators on the state level, on the federal level, about who we are, what we do, who our members are, and also about funding. When our facilities, like so many others, are very large facilities that are closed with $0 coming in, but the utility bills, the rent, the insurance bills, everything is still due. So we worked very hard, to secure some state funding for our industry and make sure we were included in the definition so that folks could apply. Same with the CARES Act, just making sure also that 501c6 trade associations were included in the CARES Act. One thing that I think we can all walk away from here this year is really realizing the value that associations have in providing resources and information to their members. Can't emphasize that enough. Everybody on this call, anybody who's an association leader, no one had a roadmap, and pretty much everyone was navigating it day by day. Even today, here we are 12 months later, and we still have states that are completely closed down for no rhyme or reason. So, we've taken a lot of interesting lessons away from the past year, and hopefully we'll continue to apply them. But one thing it's about continuing the education with your state representatives, your state senators, informing them who you are, what you're about, that you're an integral part of the community. People forget the mental health capacity, an aspect of our business, and how much fun and social element we provide, quite honestly. And that's just as big of a piece as anything else. So, we have a great position here in our communities, and it's important that our members, as well as ourselves, we continue to remind people of who we are and what we do.
So Bethany, I wanted to kind of tag on to something you said there, because you and everybody on the panel is really talking about support and how we support the members of your particular associations. But your associations are just like every organization where there's probably been reduces in force, and there's been internal effects on the association. So I'm curious how those associations have been able to continue a very high level of support when you are going through the same thing that everybody else is.
Sure. And, we've taken cuts here. We've gone very bare bones. We're probably the newest association on this call. We haven't even been around for a decade with our industry yet. So we did, but what we do, we have a passion for what we do. We have a passion for our members. So we've provided that same level of service regardless of making cuts in our own budgets. And it's been about providing the resources and providing the necessary, needs and meeting the members' needs. Obviously, this, being able to qualify for PPP funding for 501c6s have gone a long way for us to be able to continue operating budgets for the next few months. More should be done instead of focusing our efforts outside of, the United States, but we won't get political here. But yeah, we've continued to operate at the same level with, some cutbacks, but haven't cut back on what we provide to our members.
Awesome. Would love to hear some other perspectives on that as well.
I think we saw cuts in our budgets as well, but we saw our members taking those deep cuts first. And as hard as it was to try to rebalance the numbers so we could provide that service, I think when you see the people that are your members out there struggling on the front lines, you just sort of roll up your sleeves. 2020 was an all hands on deck year. There just was no way around that. And I don't think anybody escaped the pain. And I don't think anybody hesitated to help out where they could. And, we worked with other organizations along the way, and our members used all the resources that they had at their disposal. We regularly talked to members who were also taking advantage of support they were getting from other groups as well. I think that's kind of what the attractions industry is all about. And it's not just the trade groups that are on this call, but organizations like ASTM and the lifeguard licensing agencies that are in part of our organization. Everybody sort of pitched in, and I think that made it possible for us to carry the load.
Yeah, I would look at it in terms of, we did have to reshift a lot of things, efforts, hats we were wearing, but we also had budgets that were out there as well. And when we stopped doing events in person, that gave us a little bit of ability to maybe shift some of those expenses into more advocacy or other things rather than travel. Also, we have the luxury in this industry that safety, advocacy is really one of our pillars of why we're around to begin with. So maybe we just shifted a little bit on what the message was. We weren't as concerned about, the age of operators in a certain state as we were of having anybody be able to operate in a certain state. So we kind of shift some of those focuses to be able to help out where we could. But I don't think we've, dropped anything along the way. In fact, we even, all of us, I'm sure, put a lot of our resources in front of a member wall or in front of an area where you could get access to it if you were a member or not, because it was that important for the industry. And I think we'll see that to continue for a while. And I know our members see that and know that. And yeah, we might have had some, revenue concerns early on and not having events and things, but what we did and the efforts we took to help our members, they'll remember that and come back, when things are good. So, it was all an effort of maybe just shifting more than reducing.
Yeah, John, I think you make a great point about, bringing down some of those walls, based on, what level of membership they are or whether or not they're even a member. And I know a big move that we did and talked about early on was, making sure we opened up, our educational tools and advocacy tools beyond just our members. And that included those that weren't renewing the members. A lot of our member organizations were in financial trouble, and, their dues are one of those things that can get cut very quickly without, having a direct impact on operations. And we knew that was going to happen. So obviously we were very lenient with our members and whether or not they were able to pay their dues and when they are, and we're still doing that. We've extended our due payments even into 2021. And, as long as a member continues to communicate with us, that's really all we need at this point. But yeah, if you weren't able to pay your dues, that didn't mean that you weren't able to attend our webinars. You could still come and virtually and learn, and you still were on the mailing list and getting the information as we sent it out. And if we got a call and you needed help at a local level, that was still being provided. So I think that was an essential part, and it's what we do. The attractions industry, and I'm sure it's this across the nation, but in Florida in particular, it's a very family-oriented. People know each other and have known each other for decades in many cases. So treating it like that was a vital part, and I think is going to be a vital part to the recovery effort as well. And the reason why we're able to retain such a high number of our members is because of that, that they saw the importance, but also recognize the fact that the association was there for them when they needed it.
I'd like to just echo that. I mean, you just hit the nail on the head, Matt. It's about, it's not about if you're a member or not right now. It's about making sure that our industry stays afloat and stays in action, and just providing every resource you possibly can to everybody. And that's what we're here for at the end of the day, is providing those resources. And we did the same exact thing, opened everything up pretty much for free for 2020. So that is, it's about the industry and doing what's right for the industry.
Yeah. Thanks so much for sharing all of that. It's so interesting to hear all of that. On the topic of resources available for members, or for maybe those who maybe they will be members again in the future. We talked a little bit about the resources that were made available about a year ago at this time when everything was shut down in terms of reopening. What about where we're at right now, and in terms of not just getting through 2020, but now making sure we see the best success in 2021? What are those resources that members have available for them right now to, as we, we're in March right now and getting into the spring, and summer will be here, before we know it. So what are those resources that members can take advantage now to have the best 2021?
Yeah, maybe if I start, a lot of people say, oh, you work for IAAPA. I've been there before, so they think IAAPA is the expo. So, we had a 2020 where we had no expos. None of our 3 expos happened. So then we started to see our members looking into, well, what else can IAAPA do for us, if it's not expo? And, we always try to look for silver linings in things. I think it really did accentuate a lot of the other things that we do as an organization to help our members outside of those connection points at the expo and the education that goes along with it. And it really went a long way when people started looking at our website and seeing these resources were available online, seeing we are doing more and more webinars and online training, doing more things for them that was really always at their availability, but now they need it more than ever because they don't have anything else they're doing because they're not open. And I think it really opened some eyes to the benefits that are out there. So we didn't necessarily change the amount or type of benefits we gave. I think this just highlighted the need that was out there, and our members started to see, oh man, these guys do a lot of things and just have this fun show in Orlando in November every year. And that really went a long way. And we capitalized on that by doing continued webinars, and having discussions like this over 2020, and we'll continue. And to Matt's point, I don't think we're going to see, us doing no virtual events moving forward ever again. We're going to do a lot of hybrid stuff and a lot of virtual stuff. So, I think it let us learn what maybe we need to do to help accentuate what member benefits we do have and have always had, and just how we can get them into the heads and minds of our members.
Yeah, I'd like to echo some of what John just said, with our association. And I think with any association, you have members who are a small percentage of your overall membership are the most engaged members. Those are the ones you hear from on a regular basis. And really during this time, you saw a lot of people that you heard from a lot of people that you may not have really heard much from before, other than, they send their check-in every year, and, they're on your mailing list, and you might hear something from them once a year if you're lucky. But these were people who were really starting to take advantage of the benefits that have always been there. And like John said, they just didn't look at that because they only saw you for one particular resource that they looked at, whether it was an event that you were doing or something else that you offer. But now they're taking advantage of more of that stuff. So it was great to see that. And now it is our job, I think, to try and keep them engaged as things go back to whatever normal is going to be, but to see that they don't regress back into the background, and keep them at the forefront, and really try to nurture those people to be your advocates, because really our members are some of our advocates on the ground, especially when it comes to, talking to their local leaders, elected representatives, etc. Those are the people who are going to help the industry in the long run, as we are trying to just sort of keep the ship going. They're the ones who are actually driving the bus.
We've seen a change this year, though, in the resources that we're providing compared to last year. When the pandemic first hit, I think probably 90% of our members had never heard of Zoom. And, the technology spun up so quickly that it's enabled us to be pretty nimble in the way we approached it. Last year, there was a hunger for information, just straight up information from a trusted source. And we were doing a lot of webinars. We were doing as many as 2 or 3 a week through the May, June period of the year as parks were coming online. And it was quite often very one directional. Well, now we're a year further. Everybody knows what COVID is. Everybody knows who the CDC is and what their guidelines are. But parks are still struggling, and they're struggling in their own backyard in a way that they didn't necessarily struggle last year. So we've shifted away from as many webinars. We're still doing them. There's still webinars on our calendar going forward, but now we're doing more member meetups. We're utilizing the Zoom platform to host these regional gatherings in the U.S. We've done and will continue to do them for the spring, but for California, the New England, Florida, Texas, the upper Midwest, these clusters of states or big key states that are on their own, so that people can have that localized discussion. Obviously, the things that the people in California who didn't open last year need are a little different than the folks in Texas who are back to 100%. So by being able to take advantage of some of these tools that many of us weren't aware of even a year ago, we've been able to really customize in on that need that they have this year compared to last year. So that's been a big help and a big shift in what we've done going forward to make 2021 successful.
Yeah, I think that's a great point that I'm not sure it's changing much what associations are doing. They're continuing to do what associations should be doing, is providing information and education and being a conduit of communication between their members. Obviously, the content of that changed significantly last year, and yeah, the members were dying for any sort of information from a trusted source. I think that's a great point. That there's so much garbage out there that what do I need to listen to, and what is the truth? Whereas now, I think we're rolling back into how to operate your business, and people are rehiring staff, and how do you bring staff back? And it's a challenge here in Florida in particular, getting entry-level staff in particular as unemployment continues to be a source. And And so, I think it's listening to the members, allowing those conversations. We just wrapped up our regional forums last month. That used to be a big in-person opportunity for hugs and handshakes, and we did it on a virtual platform this year. But it was a great way to hear and allow members to talk to themselves. And it was a roundtable based where we started off with some topics, but it kind of went wherever it needed to go, so that those conversations could be had. As hey, how are you doing with employee? Are you able to find enough employees as you ramp up your operations? What are you doing as far as getting logistics back? Are you able to get the product in that you need to be able to operate? Are you still having issues with shipping and those sort of things? So I don't know that there's any change. I think it's the same thing that associations should be doing, and the good ones do, is being a conduit for their members to communicate their needs, and then when needed, being that assistance to help reach out to the organizations that can provide them.
So a number of you have spoken about events and doing things over Zoom versus in person. And I know we talk a lot about the pent-up demand for people to come to our attractions, and I think there's a lot of pent-up demand for those hugs and handshakes that Matt just talked about. So I'd love to hear from each of you kind of what your vision is going forward in terms of events, because we know how important networking is to all of our members. And what do you think those are going to look like? Are they going to be a hybrid? Is it going to be more in person, or how do you see that kind of playing out coming up in the future?
Yeah, I'm happy to kick that off there, Matt. And it is, one thing that we've learned here, again, we say Zoom, Zoom, Zoom. And it's kind of like the obvious, why haven't we been doing these hybrid events the entire time? Not everybody can be there schedule wise or travel wise. But why are we missing that entire audience by not offering them the opportunity to participate virtually? So the IATP for September 2021, we will be offering a hybrid event for our 9th annual conference and trade show. It will be, I could not tell you right this second in time what that'll end up looking like. But we're in the midst of figuring out all the details. When you're working with venues right now, the in-person aspect is really difficult when you're looking at the fall, because you don't know what your state regulations are going to be, what the requirements are going to be. So we can only plan with what we know for today. But we will be doing hybrid. Some of our presenters will be coming on live on a screen and won't be in the classroom, so that we can attract a larger variety of presenters that, couldn't necessarily travel to our event, but they have great information to share. So we're really excited about planning that and what that's going to look like. Obviously every aspect of your events are going to be changed, from how many people you can have in your exhibit hall to how many people you can have in an educational session. Can you serve a drink, or do you have to be sitting in a seat when you have a drink? So from an event planning aspect, it is going to be very interesting, but I can honestly say one thing we have learned: hybrid is 100%, it's a no-brainer. So that's kind of where we are. I'm be interested to hear where other folks are at. So it's as we tackle the challenges of trying to plan in person again and get people back together. But our whole goal is to pivot and help people grow their businesses.
Yeah, I couldn't agree more. And I think at one point all of us, we spend a lot of money on events, finding a venue, getting people to go there. If you're attending, you have to spend on travel and food and all of this. And those costs are not cheap. So you think of a hybrid event, like I can sit on my couch and watch everything that's going on for $50, where I have to spend $500 to go to the event. And we were scared. We thought this was going to be cannibalization, right? We won't ever be able to do in-person events again because we could never afford them. Now we're starting to see that the tides have changed a little bit, and some of, like what Bethany just said, some of our people that want to come in person can't even come because they're across the border, whether it be a country, a state, or whatever. So now we need to get those folks to be engaged and revigorated into the association. So we're going to do that in a virtual way. So once events start coming online, doing both or having both options, I think we see isn't as much cannibalization as it is, potential growth. And it just was getting over that initial fear of that, I think, was the start. But I will say tomorrow night, IAAPA, we have a Meet IAAPA event at Old Red here at Icon Park in Orlando. And we were worried that we weren't going to get, the amount of people we wanted to have a successful event. And we sold that event out in 3 days. And now we're a few people over our projection of what we wanted to be, which is a great thing. We're still within protocols, obviously following all safety procedures, et cetera, but we're back in business. We're seeing each other again. But even to that point, I've downloaded this new program and I have my own new digital business card that I can just show my code to somebody and they can download it. And now they have my business card. So I'm not having to touch it and hand it to them. So we're even thinking in-person events being a little bit different. And I had the opportunity to go to the FAA meetup that was also at Icon Park. And, a few months ago or a month ago or so. And, it was great seeing people again and everybody had a mask on and everybody was following protocols. So we're excited to get things back up and running and going again. But even the in-person events are going to be different. And we'll continue to do this virtual option or hybrids to continue with that growth cycle.
Last year, when we were in the lead up to our show, we waited, or our shows, for those of you who don't know, is in October, last year, early October. We waited until the beginning of August to pivot to a virtual event. We were committed, if there was any way to move forward, to do so, but obviously had a plan B and ran a parallel course for a virtual show. When we pulled the trigger on that, we were worried about, just like John said, what kind of attendance, how that would resonate with our members. And we saw, partly because of a pricing structure that we put together, we created an opportunity to bring as many people as you wanted. And we saw parks bringing 3 and 4 times as many attendees to the virtual show as they would have to an in-person show, just because of and they no longer had the travel costs. And there was quite a bit of appreciation for that. Team members that are on the entry-level management course or seasonal supervisors who would never have the opportunity to travel to a show like ours were able to partake in the virtual stuff. So we're committed to trying to find ways to meet that need as well as the in-person need, because to the hugs and handshakes point, nobody wants to give that up. I just saw a survey that came out this week from Freeman, probably the largest producer of trade shows in the country. And they did a survey, and 78% of past trade show attendees feel comfortable and want to attend a trade show this fall. 80% of the vendors who exhibit there, and into the winter, it jumps to 94% for attendees and 95% for exhibitors. So I think there's quite a bit of faith in the fact that the business of events is really turning around. And by the time we get to the fall and into next winter, it will be safe to do so. And a lot of people, I think, will plan to come out. So we're going to do our best to accommodate both virtual and in person.
Yeah, and I just wanted to jump in there because that's a great point, Rick, is, this isn't just about facilities and parks and attractions. There's a lot of people behind the scenes, suppliers, vendors, consultants that, they've seen the brunt of this as well. And because of the reduction in revenues and things, everybody's capital budgets are getting stretched, maybe into future years or getting cut completely. So, this is going to be impacting all of us in the industry and not just owners, operators of attractions. And I think that's important to remember because, obviously our expos, we rely a lot on our exhibitors and also our attendees, and both sides of that equation have been drastically hurt. So we want to continue efforts to make sure we're helping everybody.
Yeah, I won't belabor the point on the hybrid model. I mean, that's obviously going to be the future of what these are, because it is. I think it is an add sum game, not taking it away. And John, there is no virtual replacement for the IAAPA Expo in Orlando, so you don't have to worry about that, because that's a world in and among itself. So, but from FAA, we'll be hosting our 71st annual conference this year, and we're going back to in person. But there will absolutely be, some hybrid options there, because I think there are a lot of attraction members that they attend every year, but there's more of their staff that would like to, but for budget reasons they can't. And and I think over the next couple of years in particular, as budgets come back in attractions and as we remake our budget, and I can, speak on this personally, the travel budget's going to be one of the last things to get filled back up. And there are other operating line items that are going to have priority over travel budgets. And so I think over the next 2 years in particular, even if you're allowed to travel and have no rules and no limitations on what a trade show can be or an annual conference can be, there are going to be a lot of organizations that still aren't going to be able to expend a lot of money to either attend or to participate in. So it's going to be a necessity to keep engaged with our members over the next few years in particular, but I think forever, to have those virtual opportunities as well as the in-person opportunities.
Thank you. Ed, what about you? You're on mute.
Yep. I just saw that. I was like, oh, I went to grab my mouse. It wasn't there. No, I think that, not to belabor what everyone else, but I mean, just to echo what they've said, it is going to be a lot more of a hybrid situation, I think, going forward, especially on the education side. Yeah, some of the in-person stuff you're going to want to do because it's wrapped up in an event, something that is sort of more of an in-person gathering, but you're going to want to be able to offer it to people who may not have the budget to come, and they've looked at it and they're like, oh, it's just something that, is just not in our budget, right now. But if we can make it as an add-on, to Matt's point, it is an add sum. It's not a zero sum it's not a zero sum equation that I see. And that's the future of what we're looking at with, in 2 weeks, we have our annual meeting that we're doing virtually for the first time. Normally when we have that, it's a lot of education. So we're just doing the business side of it for this one, but looking at adding more education in the future that's going to be virtual, but still also have like our summer meeting that NEAAPA always has, is going to be an in-person event, and looking at, trying to do, more virtual, but still try and keep our core in-person events going.
Yeah, I think it's really interesting, and I'm excited to see what this hybrid type of event turns into, and really curious how you all are going to be able to find that balance between those people who are there in person and trying to eliminate any fear of missing out from people who are attending virtually, but at the same time for the people who are attending to make sure that they don't say, well, why am I here when I was here virtually? So I think that's an exciting challenge that we look forward to seeing how that comes together. What about from the exhibitor side of it, and also from the sponsorship side of it as well? I know that that's a really big part of the revenue source for the trade events. How does the exhibitor component translate into either virtual or hybrid, if that's something that is already starting to be sorted out, to make sure that that the trade part of the trade show is able to continue moving?
And maybe I'll just jump in quick. We've done some things like having an area within a virtual event where you can go and look at not necessarily booths, but you can see information for various products and services. Sponsors are getting a little more of the ability maybe to have a quick few-minute discussion about what they offer because it's part of a virtual event. Maybe that's part of a sponsorship or just something that they can look at. But I think having these maybe virtual kind of workplace areas where you can go and kick the tires a little bit and talk to some people maybe through chats and that, they may stick around in other events that we do that we typically may not have had any kind of trade element in. But now in this virtual world, we could add some of that, where it's tough for a vendor that has so many events going on, whatever their schedule is, to try to add all of these events and travel to so many more places. Now they have the ability to maybe get their information out online, be able to answer some questions and do a little business that way that we hadn't really seen before. And it provides us some new opportunities to engage with M&S to be able to have them have their products and services seen more too.
Yeah, no, that's it. And I think vendors, when they're coming into these events now, they need to look at it in a mindset of that businesses are looking for solutions. They're looking at them for revenue streams and for new ideas to improve their operations. So I think, in addition to how we're looking at things, the vendors are also going to have to change their mindset a little bit coming into these events. What they're going to look like in terms of exhibits and sponsorships coming up, we're going to change our format a little bit to make it more, we're going to have to limit some numbers because of restrictions that we're up against with our venue. But with that being said, we also want to create an experience that, does provide that thing that we're missing, the networking, the hugs, the love, the handshakes, the camaraderie that we all have grown to enjoy through the years. So it's going to be interesting to see how it all shakes out. Everybody's budgets are stretched and everybody, is going to be up against it. So we will make it as affordable as possible for people to be engaged. And our main goal is going to be to connect attendees with sponsors and exhibitors and making sure that they're making some, meaningful connections there. So we'll continue that. But how it's going to look, I guess that's going to remain to be seen here as we have to figure out our changes. A lot of folks here have their events in the fall. We're operating with restrictions and guidelines that are announced now. So there's going to be a lot of pivoting going on between now and October, September, November, whenever your event is. So it'll be interesting.
That Freeman study that I mentioned earlier, they asked folks who have attended a trade show in the past, and 85% of them said that in-person events were irreplaceable. I really don't think that the desire to travel and have those hugs and handshakes is going to disappear. No matter what the technology rolls out, people are still going to want to come together when they can. And it might be tough over the next few years as we build back, but I think we'll probably all of us likely settle into that sweet spot that meets the needs of the suppliers and the sponsors to have in-person contact with folks, utilize the technology that exists for the people who can't come in person. And we'll do the same thing with our education programs and socializing. I mean, so far, about the only thing that we haven't really been able to do well with the technology stuff is the socialization, right? Zoom karaoke is not the same as getting together on the trade show floor. So I'm optimistic. I think people are going to want to come back, and we're going to have a layer on top of that, a new layer that's interested in the virtual stuff.
It's
I don't know, Rick.
when you're a bad singer.
I don't know. I might like to see some virtual karaoke here today. It'd be great. But it is true.
Yeah.
I mean, one thing about the virtual trade show, though, is the footprint lasts longer. You go in there, and if you're able to offer that virtual component, you have the extended ability to have your brand and your name, the presence out there on the wide world web.
Yeah, and the IATP show floor, isn't that still available now, or it was just until
It just closed today. It just closed today. So I'm very tired after 3 months of trade show. And
your feet must be killing you.
They are. We just closed that after 3 months. So yes, but exactly my point.
Yeah.
Well, one other thing too, Josh, you mentioned about, manufacturer suppliers. They did a lot of innovation this year too. And, maybe some of their products changed from, I was doing a digital wristband as an entry control device, and now it's a tracking device to make sure, that I'm contact tracing somebody. Or we're seeing a lot more businesses going cashless now than probably ever wanted to, and especially much more faster than they ever wanted to, just because that seems to be, the wave of the future, and people didn't want to have to be touching things because early on, touch surfaces were such a hot issue. That's kind of died down a little bit, but businesses are doing a lot of different things where I used to manufacture something one day and now I'm making face shields and sanitizer stations today. So, I mean, people have done what they could on the manufacturer and supplier side of things too, to kind of cope through the situation. And it might be a new product line that they keep for a long time to come. So that might be some revenue opportunities for them as well.
Yeah.
Yeah, Josh, I think, if I put on my attendee hat, it's a very different decision on going to a conference and wanting to get the education or wanting to make a connection to the vendors and the suppliers. And so, I think there's a big opportunity here for associations that have trade shows and have vendors and booths set up to really expand their ability to connect vendors with purchasers through the virtual platform. And that doesn't take away at all the opportunity to have that face-to-face, because that's still going to be there, and the connection is still going to be there, and that's a very different decision, business decision to make. So I really think it's not a matter of how are we going to balance the hybrid version. I think the hybrid version is just adding on amazing connectivity and really benefit to those that participate in trade shows and participate on the selling side of an event or an annual event or conference or trade show. And so as that relates to sponsorships, again, the better the benefits, the easier the sell the sponsorship is. And so I think there's a whole new platform of benefits that can be relayed to potential sponsors, as you said, that can go on for months and months and months, not just for a week or a day. And so I think the sponsorships are going to follow, and that I don't think that's going to be as big a concern, once we get beyond, the financial constraints that are going to, kind of linger for the next year or so.
Sure. Well, I think that's great perspective. And if there's any sponsors out there that want to sponsor the Zoom karaoke starring Rick Root, we will start taking applications for that. But we are kind of running low on time right now, and this has been a fantastic conversation. I wonder if we could just get one kind of final thought from each of you, and maybe it's your outlook on the industry, your outlook on 2020 and 2021 and 2022. But just kind of what you're thinking is going to be happening in the future. So Ed, let's start with you.
I think what we're going to see in 2021 is the start, obviously, of coming back, but I think it's going to come back as a tsunami instead of as a trickle. I think there is this pent up demand of people wanting to go to attractions that maybe they were hesitant last year, even if it was open. Now with the vaccines and everything else that have been out, they're not going to be the first ones or sort of the pioneers of going back out. They're going to want to come out. They're going to want to have fun because, as Josh would say, fun is essential. And I think it's going to be a great start to the year. We'll just have to, be vigilant as we keep going forward. But I think it's going to be a great year and going to be a good path to rebuilding and getting back to where we were.
Awesome. Bethany, how about you?
Make sure we're not on mute. Yeah, no, I agree with Ed. I mean, what we've learned in states and in countries that are open, hey, if they're open, people are going. They're not just staying at home still. People want to go. People want to get out. I've sent my son to trampoline parks here in Florida every weekend since we've moved here. He goes and has a bounce somewhere. But yeah, if they're open, we'll get the people back in. People are looking for entertainment. They're looking for outlets. They're looking for exercise. They're looking for family events that they can do outside of their homes. So I think our future is bright. We're ready to bounce forward all the way into 2021 and beyond.
Awesome. Rick?
So I think all the positive vaccine news is definitely a good thing, right? It's allowed us to have a sense of confidence in the summer, in the fall. So I think that's going to fuel that fast tsunami that Ed was talking about. And I think another thing, many of our members rolled season pass holders when they couldn't open last year into 2021 if they didn't get open last year. So they've got a built-in audience already. People paid for it in 2020. Their passes are good in 2021 when those parks get their first chance to reopen in the pandemic. The parks that were open last year, as Bethany said, many of them saw, they were bumping their capacity limits, whether those capacities were 30%, 50%, or 80%, they were bumping against those. So the demand's there. And as things do better, we'll see people bounce back this year, but we have a big hole to dig out from. So even when the attendance comes back, I think parks and suppliers are going to struggle through 2021, and it'll really be 2022 till it feels like a normal year for us.
Awesome. John, how about you?
Yeah, I agree with that, what everybody's saying. I think, those people that were able to hang on to their jobs haven't been really doing a whole lot, maybe ordering a lot of takeout, but there's some disposable money in their wallets and they're willing and ready to get out and do things. And unfortunately, the ones that maybe lost their job or had some reductions, as things get open, they'll start working again, and then they'll have some money as well. So I think we'll start seeing people that have some disposable income, that want to enjoy some experiences with their families and friends, and that will bode very well for the industry. We just need to make sure that any of the attractions that we have that are new in 21 because they were new in 20 and never opened, that cycle can get started again, because our manufacturers and suppliers need to get that selling process started and start to build new attractions. So those few years down the road, we're continuing that success. And it sure is sad that we had, our best year in the industry ever in 2019, and we just got it completely shut down. But this is a resilient industry. People here are all willing to work together, and, and working with all of the folks on this call, to make our industry stronger and better. I think we're looking for good things down the road.
Awesome. And Matt, we'll give you the last word.
Sure about that, huh? No, I would echo what everybody else says. If I follow the data, and for Florida in particular, there's no ambiguity in the data. People are ready to travel. They're ready to travel to destinations that they've traveled to in the past. I sit on the board of Visit Florida as well, and they lead the nation in going out and getting data and doing research on what travelers are going to do. And like I said, there is no question that all of the data is pointing towards, I like the tsunami analogy in that as soon as the opportunity is to come, whether that be vaccine or opening up or whatever the needs to open that floodgate, it's going to happen. But yeah, I think there's also going to be some challenges in that. We're not going to be fully staffed and prepared for some of that, because it's going to take a little longer to staff back up. It's going to take a little longer to get the materials and the supplies that we need to be ready. So there's going to be some challenges that are associated with opening up as fast as I think it's going to happen. But I don't think business coming back is going to be the challenge. People are ready to travel. Fun and entertainment is essential, and will continue to be essential. And so I think those in this industry are going to be ready to do what we do and provide that fun and entertainment.
Excellent. Thank you so much for all of you for not only for joining the panel today, but for also everything that you're doing for your associations, for the industry, for doing the rain dance to bring on this big tsunami and bring that pent up demand to bring the industry back. So we really appreciate your time today for being here with us, and also for everyone who attended the webinar. We're so thankful for you attending. So thank you all for being here. And Matt, just like as we say to wrap up every podcast episode, and it's true that we are all attraction pros. So thank you.